Welcome back, everybody. I am your host, Sonut the Hero Type, and we're back with another How to RP1 short. And today we're going to be talking about sounding rockets, the grind, and more importantly, contract management. And one of the reasons contract management is so important early on in the game is you need to utilize your funds to upgrade your KSC as much as possible. That way when you get into orbital rockets, you're not wasting an entire year to do 1 or 2 launches. Before we get into this though, I did want to go over a quick thing and then we'll hop right into the video. So without further ado, let's hop into that thing. So this is going to be bad news. I won't actually have a How to RP1 episode this Monday like I normally do because I have a lot of things to do on Saturday, and Sunday's the day I spend with my wife. So Saturday for the boys, you guys, and Sundays for the wife. And because Hyper-Realism Overhaul takes like almost 25 hours to make a video because of all the preparation that goes into it. Doing that, a How to RP1 episode and a short is very time consuming, and I am not doing good on time this week, but I will try to get back and stick to a regular upload schedule as soon as I can. But I at least made this for you guys this week, so hopefully you enjoy. It's currently Friday night, it's late, and I am trying to get this wrapped up, so let's get into contract management. So right now we have no contracts selected, and I did that intentionally. Now there are different types. There's intermediate and difficult sounding rockets, and then we have the biological capsule and low space film return contracts, which are actually worth more early on, but the sounding rocket contracts actually become worth more the longer they sit. So I typically do the low space film and biological ones first and throw a couple of the sounding rockets in between, and I'm going to kind of show you how to layer your contracts to get the most bang for your buck. Now, if you look above the red text, it says the reward of this contract will slowly increase over time. So right now it's at day 221 out of 90, which means it's worth 184% of what it normally would be. So the longer those sit before you accept them, the more they end up being worth. This is pretty much exclusive to just the sounding rocket contracts, and they do get a little harder the longer they sit, but typically we overbuild, or I recommend you overbuild. That way you can use the same rocket for multiple contracts. With that in mind, always double check your contract before you accept it and make sure your rocket can manage it. Now let's go ahead and look at some of the other types of contracts. This is the biological sample contract. Now, we built this rocket in the last episode, and the reason why I wanted to show you that is because you really only need 4 types of rockets for the early game stuff until you start getting into orbital, and depending on how long you're in the sounding rocket phase, you may actually never have to upgrade another rocket. Now, you see here the advance is fairly small, but when you complete this, you get 32,000 funds, which is a lot early game, and this is actually one of the easiest contracts to do. And the reason is this is a very easy contract to do. In fact, the very first rocket we make, we could have slapped the biological sample container on that rocket and done all 3 of these. Now, the low space film one, that's a little bit different. Now, this one starts out easy, but the very third one, you have to get 600 kilometers down range, which you do need the upgraded rocket to do that. It's almost impossible to do it with the first rocket we built. Maybe yours is better than mine. I'm not going to pretend that I'm the best builder, but I will be showing you guys in a minute kind of what you're looking for when you're trying to do this downrange contract, because if you can make one that can do up to 600 kilometers and more, and at least at 200 kilometers altitude, that one rocket can do all 3 contracts, and you're done building, and you can just reuse it a bunch and focus on other stuff. Now, with that being said, you can only do one of these contracts at a time. You can do a milestone contract and stack it with a sounding rocket contract, but you can only do one sounding rocket at a time. The same thing goes for X-planes. You can do an X-plane contract and sounding rocket contract at the same time, but you can only do one of each. I hope that makes sense. So you're going to want to layer them, because once you accept the contract, the rest are going to go away, but they will come back. Let me show you what I mean. Now, here in my build queue, I have 4 different rockets. I have my uncontrolled altitude, my biological, my downrange camera, and my regular downrange. This is what I mean by layering them. I'm going to go ahead and set these up real quick and explain to you what I'm doing. So I basically just queued up those same 4 rockets twice over. That way I have a long list of them. I've already spent the money on them, so I know what I can use for upgrade points. Now, this is a very generic sample. Typically, the way I do it is I'll do an altitude, then I'll do a bio, and then a camera, and then a downrange, a bio, a camera, an altitude, a bio, a camera, a downrange. And basically, I'm just doing one of the 2 sounding rocket contracts after I do at least 2 of the other ones. That way, I'm getting more funding from those ones that pay out more, and I'm letting the sounding rocket sit long enough to be worth more money. I hope that makes sense. Not only do I like to have the doubled up rockets to, pay it all up front so I know how much I can spend on upgrading, I also have a backup rocket, so if a test flight makes one of my engines fail and I can't complete it, I can easily just re-queue that rocket. In fact, right now I'm kind of actually setting it up like I normally would, but we're not going to really focus on that. The main thing you need to understand is it's best to layer your contracts and basically do a lot of rockets in a group. That way, one, you know what your actual funding is, you already have your backups, you're planning ahead more, which is always a good thing with RP1, and it really does give you a good idea of how much extra money you actually have so you don't overspend and bankrupt your career safe. But with that being said, let me show you guys how to set up the plans tab and make your life a little bit easier. So when you're in the VAB and you're not editing a vessel, that's important. You can see this show hide build list, click on plans, and we're going to click VAB and see that I already have some plans in there. I'm going to delete this one because we don't need it, but I can add all 4 of those base rockets in case I forget to duplicate one. I can simply just click on the plans tab and select the rocket I want, and it will start building it for me automatically. You don't need to reload the VAB and load the rocket up and do everything else. This is kind of like a life-saving shortcut deal. To me, it's like a quality of life thing, and I recommend you play around with it and kind of get used to it. It becomes really nice when you get into the orbital stuff, but that's for a later episode. Let's go ahead and talk about that camera contract, and I can show you guys what you're looking for when you're trying to make a spin stability downrange camera rocket. So let's go now. Now, we started off in flight because honestly the angle it starts at isn't as important unless you're using the same exact rocket I am. If you want the craft file, let me know, I can see about uploading it. But what I want to focus on is my current angle and how fast I'm going at what altitude. You don't want to exceed 1,000 meters a second until you get to roughly 13 to 15,000 meters above the surface. The reason for that is drag loss, overheating, and a few other stability issues you can run into. But you basically want the rocket to slowly pitch how mine is, getting to about the 90-degree angle by the time you get to about 33,000 meters above the surface. This will give you probably the best downrange versus altitude available. We hit about 3K altitude total, and we end up going downrange almost 700 kilometers, which means this rocket can do all 3 camera contracts. I don't have to do anything else to it. You want kind of a nice half circle like this. That is what you're aiming for with a downrange uncontrolled rocket. If you want to use avionics like I am in Hyperrealism Overhaul for like a realism thing, then you just got to learn how to do a good gravity turn, which there's a lot of depending factors in that. We're talking an easy beginner spin stability rocket. Now, if you'd like me to make a short on doing the sounding rocket gravity turns with controlled avionics, I could definitely do something like that. But now that I know my camera rocket can easily do the 600 plus kilometers downrange, I don't have to mess with it. I'm going to go ahead and queue 3 of these up, actually 4 of them in case one fails, and then focus on the other contracts after that. And just keep in mind with the biological sample one, you could just shoot those straight up in the air. I think the highest one is 300,000 kilometers with like 168 units of sounding payload, which you could easily do. So you can queue 3 of those up and boom, you have it. So all you got to do is watch the contract parameters for the sounding rockets and just leave the other 2 alone and collect all that funding from them. Now, with all of that information in mind, there is one more quick thing I wanted to talk about why I build and roll this rocket out. Remember, this is a single player game and just play at your own pace. Don't get discouraged because you can't speed run the game your first playthrough. I mean, with the new updates, it's hindered me a little bit, but I've been playing RO for quite some time. I'm an old man, so don't stress over the game. You will have failures. You may Carnassa a couple of Kerbals, that means kill them, and you may mess up. But it's all part of the learning process, and once you get a good understanding of the game, trust me, it is one of the funnest mod packs you could ever play. But with that out of the way, let's finish the launch from earlier in this episode and do the outro. So I still have no idea how to end these things properly, so this is kind of what we're gonna do. We're just gonna do a cool fancy cinematic thing, watch the rocket fall back down to Earth, and thank you guys again for stopping by. If you liked the video, feel free to give it a like, and if you want to see more, you can always subscribe. I will try to get back on a regular uploading schedule. As I say in every video, or almost every video, you can usually find me in Karnas's Discord. If you have any questions, we have a help section inside the Discord under KSP Help. And there's also a lot of really cool people there. Some not so cool, but a lot of really cool people there. But that being said, that is pretty much the end of the episode, so I'm going to let you guys go. Thank you again for stopping by, and I hope I see you next time for some more How to RP1.